Really, it's the best thing when you don't have to host. It's like, I don't have to clean the silverware. I don't have
Right? I just show up, and that's
right?
it.
It's a really, really nice thing. So,
Yeah.
Tori just finished Joe Abercrombie's first book and did like this long video about it that was like this kind of journey along with Tori while she reads. It was cute because mainly because Pippin was just awesome throughout the entire time.
He's honestly why people watch my vlogs, if we're being honest,
Right?
it's the cats,
It's just
Yeah.
cats.
That's why they have so many views. It's because of the cats.
But it was cool. Like, you took me on this little journey of, okay, I'm reading the book and I'm going outside and it's not really spring because the weather sucks. And then you and I had a chance to talk a little bit this weekend about some of these things, but I just kind of wanted to go through, like, what I want to start with was your expectations going in.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think Blade itself is really hard
Yeah.
to read cold because
Yeah.
I was looking at it earlier. It's something like 200,000 reviews on Goodreads. It's like every single person on the planet has read this thing.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of positive opinions. So walking in, not having your expectations be through the roof is really hard. So, like, did you temper yourself before walking in? Did you?
I mean, I think one of the positives, I guess, that, hey Ty, that I had going into it, I tend to go in as blind as possible. I mean, obviously there's only so much of that you can do when you're a booktuber, when you're getting the opinions of like everyone who's read a book constantly, which is something I love about BookTube. And it's also something that can be harder when you're going into these bigger series that have been around for a long time and have 200,000 reviews on Goodreads.
Right. Boy, it better be good.
Right. I feel like I'm pretty, not objective isn't the right word because I don't really believe that that's super possible, but like, I felt like my expectations were pretty, like, I just was going to go into it and read it, and I wanted to have my own experience with it. I didn't want it to be colored by anything, which is one of the reasons why I tend to put some space between, oh my gosh, Tori, you need to read this book or this series. And then I give myself a little bit of time.
Back off.
And then I read it because that way because I'm a sponge, right? I'm an empath. So everybody else's emotions, I'm constantly like, oh yeah, that's super exciting because everyone else is excited about it, And
you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Bandwagoning is fun.
It is, but it's also something where I like to give myself a little bit of space. Like I'm doing that with Jade City right now. I'm so excited to read Jade City by Fonda Lee, but I've given myself some space from the, oh my gosh, you're going to love this series to, I'll come into it when I'm ready. And I was ready to read First Law. I got to a point in this readathon where I was like, this poor book has been on so many of my TBRs and,
okay. It had gotten ripe where it was moving to the point of rotten.
No. But I was definitely at a point where, like, you know what? It's something that I haven't talked about a ton lately, and I feel like I'm ready to have kind of my own experience with it. And the only expectations I had going in, I tried to resist, but the number one thing I was told about this was, Tori, you're gonna love Glokta because everyone knows what my archetypes are. And I was like, well, we'll see. And watch the vlog to see how that went.
I just need to do this. Apparently Andrew is setting himself up as the voice of reason by saying he writes a good book but doesn't know when to stop.
Yes. I mean, I haven't read the trilogy yet, so I can't speak to.
Well, even more so, the voice of reason is Joe.
Right.
More bears.
I mean, more bears could never hurt.
So I wanted to go. I was interested in going through. We kind of did this the other night, but going through character by character.
Sure.
Do you want to start high or do you want to start low?
Well, you're the host, Andy. Where would you like us to start?
I think most people start high, so I want to start low.
Perfect.
Which means
subvert the trope. I like
it. We'll turn it upside down like Joe did.
All right.
So let's work our way up because then let's start with Pharaoh.
Okay. Let's talk about Pharaoh.
So
who's that?
Because I completely get what you're saying, and I feel like I'm very much in the same boat. So I just want to hear you illuminate a little bit, because you kind of stopped yourself from going further.
Yeah, Pharaoh. Talking about expectations, like I had never heard anyone mention her name when I went into the books. So, and this is, I'm assuming we're letting everybody know that this is full spoilers, so I can just.
Oh, I'm sorry. Full spoilers.
I don't want to, for anybody that hasn't.
And we want you to not listen to us until you've read the book, please and thank you.
Right, unless you're like me and you will forget what everyone says about a month after you hear it. So, yeah, so full spoilers. So Pharaoh shows up like halfway through the book and was a bit startling because I had kind of settled into, okay, here's our POVs, here's what's going on. And then Pharaoh comes out of nowhere. And she just felt it was such a major tone shift, and not just because of, her character being in a different place and, you kind of get a little bit of a different piece of the world from her perspective, which is good. But the other characters were so layered, even at that point, that I got to Pharaoh and I was like, I feel like I'm in this 3D world and then there's this 2D cutout character here. And no offense to everyone who loves this character, because I've met a couple of people that absolutely love Pharaoh, and that is awesome. She is, but there's she's only one note for me. Like, it was like, I'm going to kill this guy. And then 2 seconds later, I'm going to kill this guy. And that was like the only thing in her character the entire time. And I recognize that she's got some, she's seen some things, and that's good. We love a traumatic backstory, but at the same time, use it. Like, don't just put it there and then have this character be one note. Like, give her I wanted to see a moment, some kind of breakdown, vulnerability. Give me a crumb somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, I'll buy into that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My trick is not saying anything for the other 2 books. So
right. Yeah.
And I'm so very with you on that feeling.
I mean, I'm ready. I'm more than open to her changing my mind.
Yeah.
I'm not against that. But for this first book, it was every time I'd get to a Pharaoh chapter, I was like, ugh.
Okay, so I want to move up from Pharaoh being the bottom of the list, and judging by what you said, I think I'm going to go with West next.
Okay.
Shift that happens.
Yes. So one of the things that I would say Abercrombie is not fabulous at in terms of story structure is foreshadowing in any way. At least not with certain characters. I will give it that. Because I'm hoping so, Ben. I'm really hoping that, and I have started it. See,
yeah, it was weird to me that you went right into the second book, because after watching the video, I was convinced, okay, she's going to give it 6 weeks or whatever and let it bubble.
I am very bothered by outstanding series / trilogies. So if I've started it and I liked it enough that I know I want to finish the series, I don't want, because you know how that is. If you wait, 6 months and you're like, oh shoot, I never read that second book, you forget half the stuff in the first book anyway.
Right.
But yeah, Major West was, and I was talking to my friend Ty, who was in the comments a little bit earlier, and we were kind of discussing that West in the beginning of the book kind of follows the most traditional hero-esque archetype of all of the characters.
He's true blue.
Exactly. And he's this kind of noble, like, do the right thing sort of vibes. And then, and again, not to say that they can't be layered, but the switch that happens and that shift of him getting incredibly violent with his sister, there was, especially since we are in his POV before that, that's where I had the issue with it. If we hadn't and it had come out of nowhere, it would have felt very believable to me. Like if we were from Artie's point of view or what have you, other things. But overall, I was like, we were in his POV. I saw no hint. We never mentioned his past history.
I was with you yesterday.
I know, exactly. I was like, there was like nothing ever in your brain space that I was in for like different chapters that ever would have suggested to me that you even had a passing thought about this. And I want to make it very clear, because I know that, domestic violence is a huge issue, and there, it's important to draw attention to how damaging this can be. I just was like, and again, there's some nuance to that I think different people have different, very valid perspectives on.
Yeah.
But it just really shocked me. It felt like Ty and I were talking about how it seemed like Abercrombie was writing the book, and it was all of a sudden like, oh shoot, Wes too much of a hero, isn't he? Like, let's throw that out.
Well, once again, Andrew, with all of the insight,
they can be.
And again, completely with you. My problem when I first read Game of Thrones, etc., was I didn't know who I was supposed to be rooting for.
Yeah.
Right? Because all these are very bad people.
Yeah.
And so I kept looking for somebody that
I think you wrote more for the hope that they could be good people more than anything else.
Absolutely. And so, with West, I was like, oh, okay, here's my true blue stick in the mud. They'll probably kill him, but
right. He's gone.
he's a man of integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And to have him suddenly not be in such a serious way, like, hi, Pip.
Pippin's like, I don't have time for this live stream, Mom. I put in my TV time.
And to have him suddenly not be that at all was like a hard...
It was just a 180 out of nowhere. And that's like, I wasn't doubting that a situation like this could happen at all. It was more just how it was done. Yeah.
And my problem is I walked into the second book unable to forgive him.
Yep.
And then I can't say anything about the second book. So,
well, I mean, if you've read the first book, you know that he survives it, right?
Yeah. It's all spoilers.
And in the beginning of book 2, we're kind of immediately like, hey, you want to sympathize with? And I'm like, do I though? Do I?
Maybe not.
I don't know. This would have been better if that hadn't happened or done differently. Yeah.
So moving up from West, I'm going to remove Baez from the equation, other than question marks when we go to plot.
Right.
So going up from there, I think in 4th place for you is the Motley Crew. Okay. So Motley Crew moves up the list. Now Glocta's S tier. I don't know whether it's Logan or Jez. So which one?
Jez.
Okay, Jez falls into 4th place. Okay, yes. Because you enjoyed being with it. Like, you took all of his horseshit with a grain of salt from the beginning.
Well, I mean, he's a young man that's been raised with a silver spoon in his mouth. So you can only expect a certain level of nobility from him, which sounds, he would be very upset by that, of course. But he'd be very offended that I didn't think he was noble.
If it was fashionable.
Right. If it's fashionable, I'll be noble. Yeah. I mean, I thought there was a lot of kind of this dark humor, coming of age, like hapless, we're getting a lot of that from him in the first book. And so especially we're getting this little weird, like, burgeoning romance between him and Artie. And she's kind of the reality check in some ways that I think I wanted him to have. He was getting little bits of that. And I know he's going to get more from other places throughout the series, I would assume. But that was kind of his first, like, she challenges him and she's like, you're not all that all the time. And I was like, yeah, tell him. And they were just, their banter back and forth were was just I laughed aloud multiple times during their sections, and I don't do that in books very often.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciated that about them. And I do see Jezal having the opportunity for a very big growth arc through the trilogy, which I'm looking forward to. So I'm curious to see where he's at the end of Last Argument of Kings, because, you know, he's got some space. He's got some trajectory ahead of him.
I think you might have some intuition going
right
there. Now, the problem is that I forgot, quite frankly, to include Artie on my list.
Yes.
So Artie would probably fall above West, below Jez.
I would say she and Jez are probably equal. Maybe she's a titch ahead of him.
Okay.
I would have loved to have had a POV. I don't think there's a POV chapter from her in book one. I don't know.
Not that I remember.
I was like, dude, I know Pharaoh is like a part of whatever plot exists in this trilogy at some point, but I would have loved to have seen Pharaoh's chapters replaced with some Artie West, because I think she just felt a lot more nuanced and I wanted more from her. Whereas Pharaoh, I gave up thinking there was any more to her pretty quickly. So yeah, I really appreciated Artie a lot.
Well, and Artie kind of reminded me just a titch of Denna from Rothfuss, and just kind of strong-willed, knows what she wants, not afraid to go after it, not afraid to tell you.
But she wasn't the kind of annoying, strong-willed, I felt like, as much.
Right. No, not at all.
Yeah. Because they can't trust me. Like, there are so many times when it's like, this is a strong-willed female character, and you're just like, okay.
I'm a lot more forgiving of Denna than most people.
I haven't read Name of the Wind, so
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, let me know when you do.
You're gonna have to work pretty hard to talk me into that one.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a whole nother discussion.
Okay. Skip it. Not for you. Logan is next.
Yes.
So he's in. So, and you didn't grok him early.
No.
Like first chapter you did, and then it was like, nah. And it's like, what the hell?
You took him out of the element. I love a like reluctant, grizzled hero character. I always love them. And so Logan, like I said in the vlog, like should have hit all the check boxes, but I think Abercrombie took him out of his element too fast for me.
Okay.
Like I wanted at least like one moment where he and the boys are like doing something, and then, you know, but I didn't really get that. And so I felt kind of like I was sort of like the square wheel a little bit at the beginning. So yeah,
and
I think
spirits thing took you by surprise and didn't sit right.
Well, and I mean, this is kind of part of the plot / magic system of the story.
We'll get to that later.
Right.
But what's interesting, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, I'm still very, like, this is the definition of soft magic system in my mind. Like, it's so soft, it's like barely there.
It's magic. Enjoy.
Right.
But one of the moments that you did kind of lock in to Logan when he was so far out of his element.
Right.
When he first went, you know, first day in the big city.
Yep. That was incredibly relatable for me as a farm girl from nowhere, Minnesota. Like, because I was in New York. How old was I? 20, 21, and went to New York. I was 6 months pregnant when I went to New York. Would never, ever recommend that, because you get bumped and jostled and shoved everywhere anyways, and people don't care that you're 6 months pregnant. So I'm like, not only am I like wide open spaces, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's people everywhere. And I loved like reading that from Logan, really kind of took me back to the, oh yeah, that is what this feels like.
And that stayed true through the end of the book.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely subverting the archetype, I think, because there's the moments where he's a klutz and he's just, you know, he isn't always the like perfectly like powerful hero. Like he gets knocked around quite a bit in the first book. So that was
That was one of the first things that you liked about him is like first paragraph, he almost stabbed
He's
himself.
almost stabbed himself with his own axe. And he's this like, lauded name in the North and yet almost dies accidentally by tripping. And I was like, yep, I'm here for that. We love a good klutz in fantasy.
Well, okay, so then we move our way up to S tier. And I want to start with expectations. Impossible as they were. Do you feel like they were met? Like you were like, oh my God, yes? Or
yeah, definitely. I think Glokta was the backbone of the story for me as a reader. And part of that is, and I know Glokta is everyone's favorite for the most part, but he's also an archetype that I always love. Like the tortured, kind of mildly vengeful outcast, slightly unhinged, could go completely mad at any moment. Like I always love that. Severo in Red Rising is a great example of that too.
right.
And there was, it wasn't just like, oh, Glokta has this tortured past. Like there's so many details that Abercrombie includes and it kind of unfolds. There was actually plot and trajectory to his character a bit more, I feel like, which I think was why he was kind of the grounding character for me through the book. And I've basically adopted him at this point. So, and in fairness, I don't think I realized how much I appreciated his character completely until I started book 2 and going back to his first chapter in book 2. And I was just like, I was so happy to be reading a Glokta chapter. And I was like,
Let me go with you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk about Frost and Severard real quick.
Yes.
I almost felt like it was the Three Stooges.
Oh, it was so good. I love a motley crew, and everybody knows that about me at this point, I feel like. And I love when they're just so polar opposites of each other. And Severard almost had this, like, he gave faint Jezal vibes sometimes, even a little bit, where it was like he was kind of the foppish, very slightly, but also an Inquisition practical, Yeah. If you'd taken Jezal and made him older and more jaded and put him in that position, I feel like it would have been very slightly similar.
Nice.
And then Practical Frost was just, he was the comic relief, but also like, it's kind of the trope, the henchman trope, right? But I'm curious to see how much more. You didn't get the feeling that Glokta felt 100% safe with them all the time.
Right.
And I like that. It's not like this, oh, I'll trust these boys till my dying day. It's like we work together and we work well together, but also Practical Frost could crush my head at any moment.
And have an easy time of it.
Exactly. Yep.
So, and I did a bad thing and skipped straight to Glokta when I should have done Motley Crue in surprise second place.
Yes. And again, that was another one that I noticed in the beginning of book 2. I was like, oh my gosh, we're back. I was so happy to be back with them.
Or did we open with no, I can say spoilers. Dogman in book 2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Loved it. That was the right way to pull me into book 2. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. I was so in. I was like, aha, yes.
Yes, we're back to the Motley Crew of boys. Let's go.
We can play this game all
want. Day. Like, I would write a book about that group, 100%, and have them meet Glokta at some point, and that would be great.
Well, and
I look forward to, if that ever happens, I'm going to be thrilled.
Well, I love the constant. Okay, go on 3.
Mm-hmm.
The ambush never goes right.
It never goes right. And it's always Black Dow, I think, that just does his own thing, right?
Yeah. It just starts wandering into camp and just killing everybody. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. I always appreciate a good Motley Crew, and I felt like they're just so much fun, and they're such a good distinct group, even despite the fact that they're all named veteran Northmen, but they're all very distinct.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that really worked for me too is that the Shanka are not defined at all.
Yeah, which makes them scarier.
Yes.
Yes.
The whole idea of flatheads and that's all you're going to give me is like, what are they?
Yep. And you get the idea that they're not quite human. Right? But like,
I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Are they lizard men? I thought they were lizard men.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read the trilogy. Maybe they are.
Small spoiler, not lizard men.
Oh, bummer. Okay.
So I had a list. Magic system not being defined. Did that bug you a lot? Did it throw you out of the story at all? Or was it minor and you were able to give it a pass?
I think the fact that it's a soft magic system doesn't bother me because I'm pretty like, this is going to sound weird. I don't read fantasy for the magic systems.
No.
If the magic systems accent the world and the characters, I'm happy. Whether that's a hard magic system like Mistborn or it's a softer magic system, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But what is jarring is when you're going along and you feel like you're reading a historical fantasy and all of a sudden, boom, somebody blows things up and there's magic suddenly. And that's a little jarring when you feel like it's not really threaded into the world very much.
Right.
And I'm kind of curious to see, I could see it going either way, where Logan has to do something with the spirits or it never comes back in the entire trilogy. I wouldn't be surprised by that because it just seems like something Abercrombie would do where he'd like throw that in there and be like, psych, you know,
whatever.
It's there.
You thought I was going to go somewhere with this, but
yeah.
So not enough to blow your enjoyment at all.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, because it was jarring, but it didn't detract from the characters. I didn't feel like.
Did it give you a sensation that Baez was like way over the top?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's like wandering around with
you're
a first level party with a 19th level wizard.
Right, exactly. Like he has leveled up a few times. It's like when you've been playing a video game for, 2-3 years and you have this super leveled up character and then you get, this level 2 character that comes up like, hey, you want to go on a mission with me? And you're like, I mean, sure, but you'll have nothing to do.
You can hide behind us.
Right. I'll help you get your XP.
So that gets us magic system. So let's go a little bit deeper into plot.
Okay.
So I believe I'm correct when I say that you felt like it didn't have much plot.
I was going to say, so that's plot. What are we doing next?
Yeah, exactly. We've covered that.
I mean, I felt like there was more movement than plot. And I feel like those are not the same thing.
Yep. Okay.
With plot, you have very clearly defined goalposts of some kind for the most part. I mean, they can be somewhat subtle or more obvious depending on the writer, but I feel like movement is just characters going around doing things and it doesn't necessarily tie to a main core thread.
Uh-huh.
And I understand that, we've got kind of this nebulous, these 3 kingdoms are, side-eyeing each other and there's going to be war and there's going to be war and there's going to be war. Right. That's the plot so far. There's going to be war.
Right.
And Baez obviously has some ulterior motives going on here.
But that's it.
That's what I got.
We were out of town, then we went into town. Right. We were in town, but now we're better, and we got into.
Then we went in this tower thing, and then that was kind of weird.
We walked out. We were like, "Hey, that was weird."
I get a little dizzy.
Hey, I got an empty box. Cool.
Whoa. Yeah. And it's so vague. Like there's no questions are really being answered. And I think that's why it feels like there's no plot because there aren't any answered questions because usually you kind of stagger, right? You answer certain questions at certain points and that kind of helps you move the plot forward.
Yep. And
there's just a lot of, Baez opening an empty box for us and being like, yeah, it's what could be in there, but I'm not going to tell you.
That's right.
And that's the whole book.
That's right. The plot is what could be in this book.
What could be, exactly. What could be in this book is really the question you should be asking.
Okay, so I don't think either of us are much in the same way, not in it for the magic system. We may not be in it for the plot.
No.
However, did that detract from your reading experience? Because that seemed like maybe it wasn't the number one thing that pulled it down, but close.
Hey, Jen. Yeah, I think I have always kind of promoted myself as an incredibly character-driven reader, and I still hold to that. But that being said, the first law has taught me something about myself, and that is that I thought I could read a book that had no plot and just characters and be totally fine with it. And for the most part, I've pulled through pretty well, I think. But I felt like it was just really, really good characters tend to kind of create their own plot.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I was like, okay, so we've got these really great characters and still it feels like nothing's happening. How is he achieving that? I don't know. It's amazing. I don't know how he's doing that.
They're exploring really interesting things.
Right. They're moving around.
Right.
And I'm here for it. Like there were some scenes where literally nothing happened. And I was like, well, that was fun.
They had some soup. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, they had some soup, or they, chopped a couple fingers off, or,
like you do.
A normal Tuesday. But
and one of the things that I thought you said that was really interesting was it makes the book feel like it's moving slower than it is.
Yeah.
And my translation for that is almost that moving through molasses thing, where I really like molasses, but I can't keep moving forward.
It's just slowing me down a little bit. Yeah. And I think because I read, chonker fantasy books all the time. 500-page fantasy book does not scare me. But if you look at something like, I read 1,200 pages of Oathbringer or, Words of Radiance or whatever. And I'm not comparing the two as authors in any way, just like the style of, okay, we had goalposts at least, and so it felt faster than an 1,100-page book because there were lots of events that were goalposting you're right. With this one, it feels a lot longer than a 500-page book because we didn't have any real milestones throughout the book. I mean, we do, but they're very subtle.
There's no goalposts and there is no field.
Yeah, right, exactly. Are you even playing a game? Who knows? Ask Baez.
4 different corners doing different things, okay?
Yep, and each team thinks they're playing a different game.
Here's ties. The plot went back to the mud.
Yep. It's true. And that is a testament to Abercrombie's characters, because I was invested in the characters enough that, I was willing to forgive some of the slog through the mud of the plot.
Without question, they picked the entire book up on their back and carried it through. There wasn't anything else than the characters.
Right.
And they carried it through.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's kind of a testament.
It is. It really is. And I've been told that was my expectation going in, was that Abercrombie is a very character-driven writer. There's no slander, Tiago.
You can't join late and then chime in.
No, go put your time in.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, and I think, I went into it expecting characters.
Yeah.
And that's what I got. So in that way, my expectation wasn't foiled in any way, because I kind of knew going into it, okay, so people are telling me there is no plot. So now, setting the bar.
Jen thought it was a pretty fast-paced read. It was just so fascinated by the characters that I would get lost in the book. And I came down on Jen's side on that one because I didn't notice that there wasn't a plot going on until the book was over. And oh, by the way, put on your armor for book 2. But it was the one book that I read I don't know, like I started back into fantasy maybe 18 months ago, and it was the one that kept hanging in my head saying, hey, you got to finish off this trilogy.
Yeah.
And I was enough into, I hated Jezal. Like any chapter with Jez, I wanted gone.
I wanted to cuff him around the ears a couple of times.
Right. Let me just slap you. Let me give your title to somebody else.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I got really lucky in that. Yeah, I just didn't notice that there wasn't a plot going on.
Right.
I had no idea. Like I was like, he's going somewhere. I don't know that I care.
I feel like I'm going to end the trilogy with that mindset still. Like, I know he's going somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He might not be far wrong.
Which is fine. I mean, yeah.
The book feels slow. Okay, so I want to talk about your reaction to being mean to the older librarian.
Yeah. That was, see, you kind of adopt the characters, right? As you're reading, you kind of insert yourself into, it's one of the reasons why I struggle a little bit with first person, because I don't want to be in someone's singular POV. I want to be in the motley crew, right? I just want to be the reader that's kind of thrown into the motley crew. And I tend to be the mom in most of the motley crews. And I was definitely like, Jezal needs a parent at this moment to explain to him how to have some manners.
That's a really good, I like that. That's a good position.
You know, it's, yeah, I had some mom moments with Jezal for sure while I was reading.
So with just sticking on Jez, the duel. Talk to me a little bit about that duel and what that was like for you, because you expounded on it in the video, but I'm just kind of curious on going through that.
I think one of the things I will 100% agree with that I think you were kind of touching on when you were talking about your experience with this book in the trilogy is that Abercrombie, it doesn't feel like anything else I've read. Like it is very much his own fresh take on and especially when these were written, I can see him being frustrated with certain tropes and fantasy elements that had come prior to this series. Because this series is, it's been around for a while.
It's 2013, I think.
Yeah. So it's 10 years old. So that's a long gap of time in fantasy, and trends change and all that kind of stuff. But I can see Joe like, sitting down and being like, I'm sick of this. Like, here's first law. Right. And I think the duel, I was frustrated, but also really appreciated the subversion of my expectations there. Because and I talked about this in the vlog a little bit, but usually you kind of have one of two outcomes in a duel. You've got the underdog, Jezal, who is the like hero stand-in in this case. Well,
you're not going to win.
Right. He's a wannabe hero. Okay. There's no hero archetype here. Yet.
Oh, no, but I mean the fight. I mean, it's like, Joe, you're not going to win this.
You're not. Yeah. Good luck, honey. You're doing great.
You're doing great. You're so pretty.
Yeah, you're doing it. You're looking great out there. If that counts for anything. And so you either have the underdog who like subverts the expectations and to the glory of the crowd, and that's a big trope, or you have he gets crushed and it makes him somehow a better person, and and neither of those things happened. Which I appreciated, because I was like, okay, didn't see that one coming, but in a good way. And now it had me asking more questions, which I don't know if that was a good thing at that point. As
long as you don't expect answers, you're fine.
Exactly. Baez, why do you care about who wins this match? Right. That was an immediate, because up to that point, you really don't, there's no plot. So we don't really have a clue why Baez is going here or doing these things. And so the fact that he would take interest in the duel specifically enough to use magic to bolster Jezal. Right. So yeah, that was interesting to me, because I don't know if I'll ever get an answer of why Jezal specifically. Why does Baez want Jezal on this, whatever quest thing he's going on? Why? because it doesn't seem like Jezal really brings anything to the table. I mean, if you want a poster child, you know,
all kinds of, you know, necklaces and rings and good great hair, I'm sure.
Right. Right. If you need to distract a young woman in a town somewhere, that might work for you. But as far as like actual heavy lifting in this crew, I don't see it.
Heavy lifting, any labor whatsoever, really.
Like Pharaoh has more testosterone than Jezal.
Oh yeah.
Like
by
it was
a long stretch.
right. So I'm like, so why is he here? What is he giving us here?
I want to do I
can see that, Chiago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, he just had a comment about sorry, I'm stalking the comments because it's habit. Sure. He had a comment about Jezal and the duel specifically are a metaphor for unfair society. I can see that.
Wow.
I don't know that I was reading quite that deep into it, but I can totally see it.
Me neither. I don't even know what a metaphor is. Okay, then let's talk about, let's do negative and let's do positive then.
Okay.
So let's go RD and West.
Yes.
I want to go
Let's go back. That was a fun time. Let's go back to that.
I don't even know if I want to do RD and West. I guess I do because I guess I'm more curious than I am. It broke the character for me and it really pissed me off.
Yep.
So when you have a character that does something like that, are you at the point where you're like, I don't ever want to spend any more time with this person? Like coming into the second book, like when you get to a West POV, are you like, I don't want to be here?
I mean, like I said, I sympathize with him less. And there's, you know, right away in book 2, there's a situation in which we're kind of asked to sympathize with something that he is supposed to do. And I was like, I mean, I don't feel that bad for you. But I think for me, though, I'm the type of reader who I always want to leave the door open for some kind of a redemptive arc.
Sure.
I mean, I want, because, you know, this kind of goes back to the belief that any person can be saved and redeemed, right? Yeah. And, you know, I won't lie that my faith and worldview definitely impact that. But I think
it's a good thing.
People do horrible things. People do horrible things every day, all the time. And it's not a condoning of their behavior to say that. And you're not lessening the impact of what's been done. But that open door, I want to see him make it right. I want to see him fix his relationship and break the cycle. Because we now know it's a cycle, right? Because Artie reveals in the book that her father was physically abusive. And now West apparently has taken that same route. And that's that moment where you want to see a cycle broken.
Right.
You want to see somebody pull away from their tendencies or their, you know, inner demons and choose something else. So I think
something else.
Choose something else. So I think the only way that his character is completely ruined for me in this trilogy is if we get to the end of book 3 and there has been absolutely no attempt on what if he like does cool things and acts the hero again, but it's not ever with his sister, that will bother me. Because then it's like you're trying to push this idea of a hero again, but he's not showing to me that he can go back and right a wrong.
And Chiago's defending his point.
Yeah.
He may have an actual point with the duel.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're open to redemption for West. I really, really, really judged him very, 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 very harshly. And having him be like, oh, this is the guy I'm supposed to be rooting for, and having like, oh, I can't root for this guy.
Well, it's because in this world with these characters, at least in the beginning, West is the most, like I said, the most traditional hero archetype. So we've been trained, right, to naturally kind of, oh, okay, cool. Here's the hero, quote unquote. Go, dude. You know, even those of us that read, you know, darker fantasy on a regular, which by the way, this was not nearly as grimdark as I expected it to be.
No,
Not nearly. I can see it being kind of the father of a lot of what the genre has become to some degree, but I definitely have read darker things. So, I mean, it's really an odd feeling when you're like laughing at Glokta in a torture chamber. You have to ask some questions about yourself as a person.
I can't remember who said it, but it was something along the lines of Abercrombie is such a great writer that he has a torturer and a mass murderer, and I'm rooting against the guy who has too big of an ego.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
That about sums it up.
Which takes us to the flip side of West and Glokta. That initial conversation, that conversation about the two-thirds of the way into the book.
Yep.
I think really hit you.
Yeah, it did. And I think like Glokta is the type of character who, and we get to know this about him because he's the most layered, and we really feel like you know him even by the end of the first book. At least I did. And he's the type of person that in order to survive, he's lost all of the armor physically that he has. So the only armor that he has left is his composure, his mind, his ability to manipulate other people through other means, because he doesn't have the strength behind him anymore. And to show a crack in that armor renders him completely vulnerable with nothing left, right? And I love the moments like that when that crack appears just for a second, because that's what nuance and layer is in characters, because you know that you can't physically keep that up forever. It's not possible, even for the most like jaded, hardened, you know, that crack's going to appear somewhere.
Right.
And it wasn't even about that it was West so much as it was that Glokta, you know, finally cracked a little bit and realized maybe I did have a friend. How do I feel about that? Everything I've built up into my armor is not quite as like protective as I thought it was. And it's just a really, I appreciate moments where characters who have had horrific abuse in their past come through and they have those moments of vulnerability. Those always get me because I get it. And I think that solidified my favoritism of Glokta even more. Because it was like, yep, the crack is there. That means that he is really layered, and we're going to see bits and pieces of more of that, I would assume, going forward.
Well, and it was the first moment for me where you actually recognized what Glokta was.
Right.
Right. You heard about it, and there's some mentions and the touch. Okay. I kind of get it, but it was the first moment that it emotionally landed home.
Yes.
And you saw how far he had fallen.
Well, and there's a line, my favorite line in any fantasy book of all time is in Dead House Gates by Steven Erikson. And I've mentioned it on my channel before, and I won't say who says it or where in the book it is or anything, but it's armor can hide anything until the moment it falls away, even a child, especially a child. And the thing I love about that so much is with Glokta, substitute child for broken person, if you will. Like the idea that, you know, when that falls away, what do you have left? And confronting that and being honest about, you know, what's left when the armor falls away. And that was a moment we got of that with him. Yeah.
Thiago has yet another good point.
I mean, it's true. And that there's some really good parallels, I think, in this book because of that. you know, you've got kind of, and there was even that moment when Jezal looks at Glokta and he's a little like, which is, you know, I get it. But you kind of, I think that's what Jezal is afraid that he'll become in some ways. Cause you hear him talking about this, you know, doddering old man that is Baez, and he gets down on, Marshall, Verst, whatever his fencing master, and he's always looking down on these
names of all the masters,
right? The people that are broken or old or this, that, or the other thing. Like Jezal's like, oh, thank goodness I'm not these people. So his reaction, I really like that, because that reaction to Glokta is even more potent with that.
So I want to go high and low. So I want to end on a high note. So we'll
Okay.
go low first.
Okay.
The Bloody Nine
Mm-hmm.
did not land.
Yet.
Well, no, we're talking about the first book, and you already have to do the first book.
Yep. Nope, not for the first book, no.
So,
and I actually think that's one of the reasons why Logan ended up lower than his crew on my tier list. Yeah.
Right. Because you knew what you were getting with the crew.
Right. Yeah.
Was it simply that it was just out of the blue, or was it additionally unsatisfying in some other way?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is an example of Abercrombie not foreshadowing. Like, it feels like he got to that point and was like, you know, what would be cool? You know?
Wait, hang on. I'm so sorry. Tiago, you and I will talk about it. It'll be okay.
And also, I love how whenever I have a critique of a character or a book of any kind, people are like, oh, you're hurting me. You hate it. You hate everything about it. And I'm like, no, I like Logan as a character, actually. Right. Like, I did like Logan. Logan's great. No arguments. I think this particular aspect of his character was, and again, this is hard for me to talk about without knowing the full scope of how Abercrombie's going to use this. But in general, in general, in the first book, there was absolutely nothing to hint at any point that Logan and the Bloody Nine were not, like, and I don't even know what to call it, the same identity.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah, because that's kind of the way that it's being played off at the end of the book, which is like, okay, if you're just throwing into it like, oh, he has a, you know, multiple personality and alternate identity and he turns into a killer, and then I'm like, well, now I'm completely uninterested in his character, because I would rather have Logan struggling to be that person, because it's the same, you know what I mean? It's a different way of approaching that. And I think separating the two, like, I get he's the Bloody Nine on the battlefield. I get that kind of separation.
Right.
But having it be completely like, oh, this other, it's almost like a possession sort of thing, sure. Whatever. And I thought, well, maybe it's because he speaks to the spirits. Maybe it's something to do. I don't know. But yeah, I'm withholding judgment officially until I know where it's going.
There's Jen's.
Yeah, and I can totally see that comparison. I think I would like it better if it wasn't. I don't know, especially because there was no hint before that.
So surprised out enough field drew me in and maybe want to know more about Mile and everything. I thought it was one thing, but isn't. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I just have no idea where he's going with it, because it totally came out of the blue.
Right. Because they talk about the Bloody Nine. And they talk about, I mean, especially with Dogman and the rest of them, you get hints at it. And for you, the fact that it was really genuinely no longer the same character
really threw me out.
Kind of lost the investment that you already had in Logan and left you with somebody you didn't know.
Right. Yeah. So it's almost like you're suddenly introduced to a brand new character in this moment where you're expecting Logan, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, by the way, like, okay, but I don't care about this.
Right.
You know, like, because I didn't there was nothing. There's nobody even mentioned like, oh, he's like a different person. You know, like it wasn't, there wasn't any of that. Or when Logan talks about like, you get that he's afraid of his past, and that comes through, that he really doesn't like the amount of blood that's on his hands. So I get that. But he never separates the two, even when we're in his head and his POV. And I think that's another example of really not like giving something.
I got it. Okay. That helps me get there a little bit. Now, I want to end on a positive note because I want to do dialogue.
Yes.
Just give me something. Give me a line. Give me a moment where you're just like, I am so glad I'm reading this.
I mean, literally, if we're going to dialogue specifically, I think one of the things that Abercrombie is absolutely genius at is fitting the dialogue to the characters that are speaking. And that's one thing that I think a lot of authors don't necessarily catch all the time, is when you're hearing dialogue between the northern crew, and then you go to the banter between Jezal and Artie, and then you go to the discussions between Glokta and the Practicals.
Sure.
The dialogue is all amazing, but it sounds very distinct to the characters that are speaking and you know, being in the situation, which I loved. I loved how the voices were so distinct. I love all the little references being dropped in here.
Right.
Yep. Actually, the last one that I read was, say one thing for Logan Ninefingers, say he's in pain.
You have to be realistic about these things.
Yes, I know, Thiago.
But that's one of my favorite repeats. And Joe has, I think, 7 repeats that he does throughout, and all of them work.
Yeah.
And it never feels like he bangs that drum too hard.
Right.
And it always works. You know, say one thing for Logan, or do you have to be realistic?
Well, and I think if I remember correctly, one of the last, so in the book, Glokta's first line in the book is, why do I do this?
Why do I do this?
And the last line of the book is also, why do I do this? And I love a bookend like that. I think it's really cool when it works, and that definitely
Black and Blue beat us both.
Why do I do this? Yeah. And there's so much, like, especially hearing that in the end, when you know Glokta, you didn't know him at the beginning, but now you just get that weariness in it. Like, why do I do this? Why am I here? Like, yeah, it's brilliant. The dialogue is really a star performer in this book for sure.
Well, and I love what you say there, is because I feel the same way. You could drop me into any scene, removing all the proper nouns, and I would still know who's talking.
Absolutely. Yep.
They've all got their own way of going about with the dialogue, and it just works.
Yep.
And
we said it was full spoilers at the beginning, Thiago. Again, put in your time. Go back.
Welcome to the party, pal. But the other thing for me too, like, the dialogue works so well, and they all felt like they had their own color and their own voice, and you know, obviously motivations and everything that you build into a character. But then you take that dialogue and you add that narrative style to it, all the quotes that we've just been talking about. See you, Jen. All the quotes that we've just been talking about, and you bounce back and forth between phenomenal dialogue and phenomenal narration.
Yeah.
And it's like reading Stephen King with David Mamet. It's just like, okay, cool, let's go.
Well, I had seen a couple of interviews with Joe prior to reading this.
Okay.
And that actually, I think, kind of helped, because Joe is a character in the best way. Like, listening to him talk on interviews is so entertaining, and you get that same kind of, like, humor style and snarkiness, and there's that very, like, gritty, like, edging on nihilistic view of the world that just kind of comes right on into the book, and it's a very strong authorial voice, I think.
Yeah, and just so much of it sticks in your head after you're done. It's like eating ribs and feeling the barbecue. And you're like, oh, that was good. Oh, that's so good. Oh, there's some in here. Oh, it feels good.
Yep.
And I really hope that you have a good time in book 2 and book 3. Because I feel like there's so much more of what you're already liking about it waiting for you.
Yeah.
Like I said, I wouldn't hold my breath for any kind of plot showing up.
I'm trying not to.
But I'm glad you finally got to it and it bubbled to the top of the TBR and it became the right time.
Right.
So I think that's awesome.
So I mean, that was the first book on my TBR for April when we decided we were going to do the TBR readathon. I was like, well, gee, I wonder which book I should read this month.
This has been on here for a little bit.
Yeah.
So is the plan to just burn through all 3?
I think so. It'll kind of depend on how May goes, because I am definitely ready for some mood reading.
Yeah.
And May is my birthday month, and I was like, you know what? If there's ever a month to like, thanks, about a month from now. So, but
happy birthday to month.
Yeah. So, if there was ever a month to really like just completely let myself go and mood read, this is it. So that doesn't mean that I won't read it this month, but I don't know if I'm feeling it. I will pick it up, and if not, it'll probably be June.
Nice.
So, and I've gotten this far in, and I haven't been vlogging it because I just wanted to read it.
Sure.
But now I'm
a lot of production and a lot of editing that went into the first one.
Vlogs are a lot of work. They're a lot of work. They're fun,
and the work was valuable, and it showed, and it was. It made it good.
I love the conversations that happen on the vlogs, and I love connecting with people that have read the books and really love them, because spoiler-filled reviews aren't as fun. They're just not. Vlogs are more fun because you get to kind of, and I know a lot of people on the Sanderson vlogs that I've done have said that they really enjoyed getting to re-experience the books for the first time through me. Nice. So that's kind of a fun perk also. But
actually, I'm very much in the same boat. It's weirdly fun to watch.
Because you can't, once we read a book, like I would give anything to go back and be able to read Red Rising again for the first time.
Sure.
But I can't. So I'm just over here with all the newbies that are reading it. I'm just like, all excited about it.
You.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Well, thanks a ton for taking the time. And I just wanted to sit down and have a one-on-one with you about something. And this was
perfect opportunity for sure.
Because my bench is not deep, so when somebody reads a fantasy book that I read, I was like, "Oh, cool!"
Yeah,
it was like, and one I was really, really, really into. I don't love everything about the book, but I really enjoyed the read a lot.
Yeah.
So I just think it's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing more of your journey in that way.
Yes, I will definitely be keeping you posted as I get through book 2.
Oh, and just one more thing for everybody before we take off. I need you to, before we leave, go and buy Phased. And purchase it and get it in your Amazon and just have it sent to your house or your Kindle or your reader, whatever way you absorb books.
I can promise there is plot in Phased.
And dual identities with purpose.
Sort of. No. But in my upcoming fantasy novel, one of the main themes is identity. So
nice. That's perfect. All right. I appreciate you. I'm going to go make dinner for my kid.
Sounds good. I'm going to go eat pizza.
Bye con Dios.
Bye.